Well, hello, this is Jimmy. I am the founder of Jimmy Riggs LLC and Send It Delivery Co., which is the name of this channel. I want to jump right in and give you as much important information as quickly as I can in this video. Let's talk about why forming an LLC, if you are a single person engaging in business, may not be the right choice. And it may depend on a lot of factors. There may be things I'm not aware of because the amount of research I've done into it is somewhat limited and I'm still learning more. I encourage you to look into it yourself, but I want to give you the big points that I've found so far so you have something to consider and some direction to take your research. All right, first of all, let's jump right in. Why are you thinking about forming an LLC? Well, you're thinking about forming an LLC because you figure that if you have an LLC, you will be personally protected to some extent from liability for things that happen when you're doing business. So let's just kind of be really realistic right off the bat. If nothing major ever happens, nothing happens that you aren't able to resolve on your own just by being a good person and trying to work with people and trying to make things right. If nothing that you can't resolve that in those ways ever happens, you don't need an LLC, right? You understand that. You're not thinking about forming an LLC so you can just like quit as soon as the first minor thing happens. No one goes into business with that attitude. We go into business thinking we're going to do our best. We're going to try to make this happen. We're going to overcome the hurdles that happen along the way. We're not just going to use it to, be able to shut things down the first time something goes wrong and it gets a little bit hard. If you're going into business and you don't have that mindset that you're going to be able to weather a few things, then I'd encourage you not to go into business at all, because things do happen. No matter how good you are, no matter how careful you are, things happen. It's not always your fault, but when you are running a business, at some point, something's going to happen that you have to deal with. So the LLC really comes into play when something happens that's so big, so major, so significant, that you, as a decent individual who wants to make your business work, who wants to make things right, just isn't able to because it's too big, it's too major, it's too unaccomplishable for you to make things right. Okay, that's when the LLC comes into play. So let's talk about what that looks like. First of all, shutting down your LLC, because that's what some people say, is like, oh, well, something happens, I'll just shut it down. Shutting down your LLC is not that simple. I've never shut one down, but in the course of the research that I've been doing, I've come across this and it makes sense. I encourage you to look it up on your own. It's not that simple. If you have accounts open, you have business debt, you have have loans that are not fully paid off in the name of your business, you have any unfinished business at all, that's going to make it all take longer. But even without any major loose ends that you have to tie up, there's still a process. It still takes time. So don't count on it being like something you just, close the book on and walk away the same day. It's not going to happen like that. Let's talk about a couple other major factors here. Even if you shut down your LLC, in our legal system, it is still possible for somebody to pursue you and pursue your personal assets as the former owner of an LLC that was shut down. If they can demonstrate that they were wronged, and that does not mean that you intended to wrong them. It just means that something happened, probably unintentionally, that caused them harm. And if they can show that happened as a result of of your business doing its operations, then they can pursue your personal assets even if you have shut down the business. Again, fact check it, look it up on your own, see what you find, and if you find contradictory information or important information that expounds on what I'm saying, please add it in the comments. I'd love to learn more, and I will adjust what I'm saying if it's misleading in some way. But this is to the best of my understanding, based on the research I've done. Please let me know your thoughts, but just look it up, There's something called piercing the corporate veil. It's another thing that can happen when somebody believes that you should be pursued directly. Any person can sue your business, you personally, or both. And again, we don't want to be like fatalistic, but we got to be realistic, because realistically, you are thinking about forming an LLC in case something like this happens. Having an LLC only comes into play when you can't handle it person to person and find a resolution. Well, when you can't handle something one individual to another and work out a resolution, guess what is involved? A court is involved. That's the way it goes, right? If a court doesn't need to be involved, then that means you were able to handle it person to person. When you can't, a court's involved. It's kind of one or the other. And we don't need an LLC for situations where we're able to handle it person to person, because person to person means I could have done the same thing as a sole proprietor. I could have done the same thing as just a guy who is accepting payment to do certain types of business, right? So the LLC is only a factor when something's the type of thing that's we're going to end up in court over. So let's talk realistically about that and not beat around the bush. And the fact is that if you end up in court, that person could be suing you as an individual as opposed to suing your LLC. It would probably depend on what they find to be more advantageous and what they can find legal basis for doing. Now, I don't know about you. I'm not a lawyer, and that means that it's going to be really hard for me to prove in a court of law that somebody should be suing my LLC and not suing me directly as an individual. I imagine that that person's going to probably have a very smart, capable, competent lawyer working for them, and they're going to make their case much better than I can make mine. And if their case is that they have the right to come after me as an individual, as opposed to coming after my LLC, there's a good chance that that is going to be upheld in the court, right? Because I'm not enough of an expert. And the fact is that as a single member LLC, really it's just me doing business, right? And then I put the name LLC on it in hopes of protecting myself. But the fact is, it's going to be really, really hard for me to prove where my business stopped and me personally started, right? How do I show that that was my business's decision and not my decision? Because really, if we're going to be honest, it was my decision. Every single business decision, if I'm the only one running the company, is my decision. So in my opinion, with what I understand, it's going to be really easy for somebody who has the knowledge, has the lawyer, has whatever else in their court to come after me individually still, right? It's going to be really, really hard for me to make the case that this was my business's decision, not mine. You should be coming after my business, not me. And I think that's actually a really, really awkward thing about the way that an LLC is classified legally, but it gets even worse. I personally might prefer that somebody comes after me as an individual, and here's why. If they come after my LLC, I cannot represent my LLC, which really effectively means that I can't represent myself. In my opinion, that's a problem because I have the right to self-representation. And if you're going to call my business a separate entity, then it should also have the right to self-representation. And how should it be represented? Well, obviously by the person who is, the only member of that LLC. But that's not the way that most courts seem to see it. This one, I'm confident that if you do your own research, you're going to find the same thing that I've found. And I think there's still more valuable research to do. I would like to know, what is the highest court that has ever found this to be the case? What was the wording in that case? This is something I would love to challenge one day. But the reality is that right now, the way it currently stands, you cannot represent your LLC in court because it's a separate entity from you. At least this is the way the reasoning goes. It's a separate entity from you, and if you were to represent it, you would be practicing law, and only a lawyer is allowed to practice law. So, therefore, you cannot represent your LLC in court. In small claims court, you probably can. But anything beyond that, you can't. And guess what? In small claims court, you'd be representing yourself anyways, so it doesn't really matter whether there's an LLC involved or not. Here's why that matters. Now, if you are forming an LLC and you already have a substantial amount of wealth and a substantial amount of assets, I think it may make perfect sense for you to form an LLC to keep your business entity separate from yourself. One, because if you do need to represent or you do need to defend your LLC in court, you can afford to hire a lawyer, and it may be in your best interest to do so. Or it may just cost you a whole bunch of money that you didn't need to spend, because maybe it was simple enough that you could have just gone up, spoken in front of the court, told your truth, plain and simple, and won the case without a lawyer. Because I think some of that mystique around being a lawyer and being able to practice law is just that. It's just a mystique. And judges are usually pretty perceptive, smart people. If you are in the right, you can go in and just clearly, plainly express that. They're going to be able to see it, and you'll probably be okay. That's my opinion, and it's not legal advice. And then the other thing is that if you already have a lot of assets, then you actually have something worth protecting outside of your business. And it does seem to me, and I need to research this more too, that having the LLC can potentially, especially if you have a good lawyer in your court, can potentially protect your assets from being used to resolve some sort of dispute or pay some sort of debt. On the other hand, if, like me, you have very few assets, you're looking at most of the most valuable ones right behind me as I record this video. You have few valuable assets. You don't have a large savings outside of your business account. Then it's like you really don't have that much to lose. And you're also probably in the position where if it came to hiring a lawyer, if it came to a court case, I should say it that way, if it came to a court case and now you have to hire a lawyer, you're out of luck already, right? You don't have the money to hire a lawyer, especially, if your business is just starting out. You don't have the money to hire a lawyer. Now a default judgment is going to be entered. It's probably going to be, you probably could have defended yourself better without a lawyer than not at all, and, or you're out of, maybe you win your case, but you're out a bunch of money paying the lawyer. So you don't end up having to pay your accuser anything, but you paid the lawyer a whole bunch of money. And if you had just been an individual or a sole proprietorship, you could have just walked into the court, made your case to the judge, answered the questions that were asked of you honestly, and walked away from it. So I think that whether an LLC makes sense for you or not may depend in large part on how many assets do you have that are your personal non-business assets, and how much money do you have outside of your business. If the answer is not a lot, then I really don't think a single member LLC makes sense. If the answer is, yeah, I'm loaded and this is just something I'm interested in pursuing as, an extra job, I got my primary thing already, then maybe the LLC really does make sense for you. Again, this is based on just some preliminary research on the topic that I've done, and there may be a lot more to explore here. If you have some insights, you have some research you've done that you think I didn't touch on, please share. I would love to hear it. I hope this video gave you something to think about and something to look into, and helped you at least know some of the questions that you should ask before you make the decision to form an LLC or a DBA, sole proprietorship.